We heard from Mark Richt on the phone during the telecast. Mark Richt got to see his Miami talent for 2016, but also all the mistakes he needs to clean up. Mark Rogers TV and Last Word on Sports just a few moments after the Canes blew one against the Washington State Cougars 20-14 at the Sun Bowl. So before we talk about everything that Washington State did right in finishing 9-4, let's talk about the Canes' many mistakes. First off, before the game, safety Jamal Carter, who had 48 tackles and a pick this year and is a key player in the secondary, and that is huge against Washington State in particular. And Cortrell Jenkins, who started 7 games, had 3.5 tackles for loss and 1.5 sacks, both suspended. Late in the second quarter, in a 17-7 game, Rayshawn Jenkins, key player in the secondary for the Canes, called for targeting, ejected. He's got 49 tackles this year and 3 interceptions. So Miami's depleted secondary down 2 players. After an opening drive that looked very impressive, not just from Brad Kaaya, but the entire Miami offense, he got protection, 15 plays, 69 yards, and a 4th and 5 conversion. Miami went into a hole offensively. They couldn't block up front. They didn't protect Brad Kaaya until very late in the game. The running game was non-existent. Throw out the Braxton Berrios 60-yard run. Miami was outgained rushing by Washington State. All right, more mistakes by the Canes. They had 2 consecutive red zone trips in the first half, result in 0 points. Red zone, 0 points, not even field goals. Rayshawn Scott had a horrible first 55 minutes of this game. He ran a post pattern. Kaaya put it right on the money. Credit Charleston White. He was beaten on the play for Washington State. He stripped the ball. This play would have been called a touchdown maybe 5 to 10 years ago before the rule changes in both college football and the NFL, because Scott had it for a split second. Then it was knocked away. It popped up into the air, and Peyton Pullour intercepted the pass. So that was one botched trip in the red zone for the Canes. The next one came after on the next play. They got a strip fumble. The defense turns it over, gives it back to Brad Kaaya and company. They get into a 4th down situation at the 15-yard line. They don't convert. So they negate the field goal. They go for it on 4th down. So 2 red zone trips, no points for the Canes. It's 20-7 at the halftime. Luke Falk coming out 5 for 5 on the first drive, 75-yard touchdown drive there. And again, the Canes making mistakes all over the place. 46 degrees at game time, a little bit of sun. The second half, a blizzard. Not good for the passing game, especially for Luke Falk, who did what he needed to do, but really didn't look himself in the second half, but didn't make mistakes, as the Canes continue to do. Rayshawn Scott had a horrible game, as we mentioned, in the first 55 minutes. He dropped all sorts of passes. Stacy Coley had a long touchdown run called back because of a block in the back. Miami did get a touchdown later, and Braxton Berrios set that one up with a 60-yard run. Mark Walton finished it off. He looked impressive despite the stats, 8 carries, 12 yards. But in the passing game, Walton stepped up and made some great catches. Caught one-handed down near his hip on a post pattern. Walton scores. It's 20-14. Miami has another touchdown called back when they drove the length of the field. Rayshawn Scott finally got his head out of his and made 2 great plays. 5 minutes to play. Miami's second to last possession. Needed some plays. Kaaya started to get some time, delivered a 3rd down conversion to Scott. Then Scott high-pointed the football and outfought the defender for the ball inside the 10-yard line. So Miami ready to take the lead after all the mistakes. 20-14, they score a touchdown, call back for another block in the back. Miami doesn't convert on 4th down. They actually turn the ball over. Mark Walton fumbles at the 3, so they're 3 yards away after scoring the would-be go-ahead touchdown. They cough it up to Washington State. They had the Cougars buried at the 2, but Washington State moves it out. Miami gets the ball back. They've got one last chance. So after all those mistakes, they could have made up for it. But instead of putting the football in their quarterback's hands, they give it to running back Joe Yearby to run a halfback option It's a wet ball. It's been snowing the entire second half. He loses the handle. It gets picked off on that one by Shalom Luani, who now has 4 interceptions for Washington State. Washington State runs out the clock. They gain 2 first downs, and that's your ball game. So those are all the mistakes from Miami. Brad Kaaya, again, didn't have a prolific day, but 17 of 31 under the conditions and all the dropped passes, 219 yards, 1 TD, 1 interception. Canes couldn't run the ball. One bright note, possibly the one key area on this team that has let them down the entire season, the offensive line. They've got 10 starters back from the first 2 on the depth chart for Mark Richt and company to come in and try to teach these boys how to block, both running and in pass protection. Okay, for Washington State, not going to talk so much about Luke Falk. We know him. We know what he's done. He's thrown over 600 passes this year. He now has 38 touchdowns and only 8 picks. He didn't play a great game. The weather conditions worked against him, but he didn't turn it over in this game. Washington State wins now over winning 4 and 2 and 3 games in past years because they can run the ball, not prolifically, as a second option, but they can run it. You got to respect the run, and the defense is so much better than it used to be. For Washington State, they've got a pass rush. They were in Kaaya's face. They contest throws in the secondary. It's a really good defense for Washington State. Look at the scores in the game log and the yardage totals. This Washington State team is not winning all the time, 51-48. The defense has played really well, and this is definitely a top 25 ball club. They finish off at 9-4, and they've got Luke Falk back next season. So things looking good for Washington State. Mark Richt with some work to do for the Canes. Final 20-14. Need to hear from you now right here on Mark Rogers TV.